Hey there, welcome to day 3 of the Not Your Average Shirt or Dress Sew Along. Today is where all the fun begins. It's where we begin to sew, and more specifically, it's where we sew and work on the knot itself, which is the most beautiful part of the shirt, in my opinion. So today, in this video particularly, we are going to be talking about the non-breastfeeding knot version. So if you're doing the non-breastfeeding version, this is the video for you. So we're going to cover it from top to bottom. So let's get started.
This is a video demonstration on how to create the knot part of the Not Your Average Shirt and Dress pattern from 5 out of 4. So to start, I'm doing the non-nursing version. If you're doing the nursing version, the process to create the knot is the same. You're just going to have an extra layer underneath your cross pieces, and your cross pieces are going to have a little cutout in them rather than being straight like the non-nursing version. So to get started, I've already sewn my shoulder seams up here, and this is facing the wrong sides out right now. You want to mark the center of your cross pieces by folding them in half and marking them with a pin. If you're doing the nursing version, just keep in mind that where the little cutout is here, that is not your center. You still want to fold your piece in half and find the center and mark it. So now that my centers are marked, I'm going to turn this right side out. And I'm going to cross these pieces. I'm going to put the left side on the bottom and then put the right side on top. It really doesn't matter. This is just how it's done in the pattern, so I'm going to follow the pattern, but your knot's just going to go the different way if you switch these. So once I have them crossed like that, I'm going to bring the bottom sections down a little bit just to make it a little bit easier and make it kind of an X. And then I'm going to take the piece on the left and I'm going to cross it over the piece on the right, and I'm going to pin it at the bottom and side of the cross piece. Don't include the back, and if you're doing the nursing version, you don't have to include the front. So you're just going to pin it to itself. And then I'm going to take this piece and do the same thing right away just so it's out of my way and so it's secured. And pin it at the sides. So now if I pull these out, you can see the knot starting to form there. Now I'm going to pin, make sure you have your right sides together, make sure you don't have a twist in here. I'm going to pin all along the bottom here as close as I can to my center pin here. So I'm going to pin it all across the bottom. Until I get to that center pin. Okay, so now I have my left side pinned all across to as far as I can get to the center without pinning the right side piece. So now I'm going to do the same exact thing on the right side. Again, making sure my right sides are together and that I don't have a big twist in here. So now you can see I have both sides pinned. Make sure when you're pinning you're not stretching your fabric either. That's important. But now that it's pinned, I'm going to take it to my machine and I'm going to start on the outside and I'm going to sew using a stretch stitch, or I'm going to serge it, sew across here to as close as you can get to this middle without going through your cross piece. And then again on this side, start on the outside and sew all across the bottom to as close as you can get to the middle without going through your cross piece. Do not sew these two sides together. Those are just pinned just to keep in place to make the pinning easier. You could actually take those out now if you wanted to. You're not going to pin those. Those are going to flip down. So I'm going to go to my machine and sew that, and then I'll be back to show you what it looks like. Okay, so I have sewn those pieces together and I removed the pins on the side that were holding these pieces in place, and you can see now I have the knot of the shirt. You may need to do some manipulating to get your raw edge of the knot to fold under so that you don't see it. Once you're done doing the hem around the neck, that'll be a little bit easier to do. But there it is. So now we're going to continue on with the knot shirt now that we have our shoulder seams sewn and our knot created in the middle. So the next step is going to be to fold a 1/2 inch down around the neckline. We're going to hem the neckline. So we want to fold a 1/2 inch towards the wrong side of the fabric. And then I'm just going to mark a pin there, because what I'm going to do is take this to the iron and press this seam so we have a nice crisp edge going all around the neckline, and then you want to top stitch using a stretch stitch or a cover stitch or a zigzag, whatever you want to do to finish off your hem. So I'm going to pin this all the way around, and then I'm going to take it to the ironing board and press it, and then go take it. I'm going to use a cover stitch and do the cover stitch around so that we have a nice clean edge all around. You want to start in the middle and work your way out and around the middle. If you have trouble getting your foot close enough in here, you could start at the back and go down one side and then come back and go down the other side, but then you're going to have overlapping stitches in the back here. So if you can get your foot into this knot the best that you can, it's best to start at the knot in the middle and work your way around to the other side. So I'm going to go do that, and then we'll be back for the next step. Okay, so here's my finished neckline after I've pressed and top stitched. I used the cover stitch. Obviously you would use a thread that coordinates with your fabric. I used black here so it's easier to see. One thing to keep in mind when you are stitching this, you want to be careful that you're not pulling too much out of your knot in order to get close into that knot. I'm not sure if you can see, but I went a little bit too far and I had to pull the stitches out. So now you can kind of see those little holes along here. So you want to be careful you don't pull too much through here while trying to get into there to start your top stitching. You can pull a little bit, but don't pull too much. So now we're going to attach the bottom to this bodice. So I have that piece cut here, and what we want to do is we want to attach the right sides together. So I'm going to flip this up like this so my right sides are together. I'm going to pin all along here. Okay, so I have pinned all along the raw edge here, and in the middle you want to make sure that you have a little bit of an overlap on either side of your knot with a pin in it to hold it there, so that when you sew across here you don't end up with a hole in the middle of your knot. So it's very important, make sure this is all pinned and you don't stretch the pieces. When you get to the middle, take both sides of your knot and make a small overlap and pin it in place so that when you stitch this you won't have a hole in the middle. So I'm going to go take this and I'm going to stitch it with my serger. If you don't have a serger, you can use a zigzag or a stretch stitch across here, and then I'll be back to show you what it looks like. Okay, so here's my line stitched across, attaching the lower bodice to the upper bodice. And if I flip this around to the right side, you can see how that looks and how we don't have a hole here because of that overlap that I had made. Now if you look closely, you'll see that I did have a little bit of a wrinkle in my fabric here. The perfectionist in me would go back and redo this whole line of stitching just to get rid of that wrinkle, because I had the fabric folded up a little bit there where it shouldn't have been. But for the sake of this tutorial, I'm just going to leave it and move on to the next step. So the next step is going to be working on the side seams. So we're going to use a long basting stitch to stitch from this bottom seam up to the top of each armpit. Now depending on which cup size you're making, you may or may not have to do this. Because I'm doing the smallest cup size, you can see if I line this up here, my side seams, let me turn it this way and see if you can see it. my side seams are pretty much the same size. So I'm really not going to have anything to gather here. However, if you're doing a larger bust size, your front piece is going to be a bit longer than your back piece. So you'll want to do a basting stitch from this lower seam here up through the armpit. And then when you're attaching your side seams, when you get to this point, you want to gather this enough so that it matches your back armpit. So if you're doing a larger cup size, you'll have some gathering here. If you're doing the smaller cup size like I am, you really don't have to do that step because these two pieces already are pretty close in length, and I'm really not going to have anything to gather, so I'm just going to skip that step entirely because there's really no point in basting it for myself. So now I'm going to flip these right sides together and just pin along this side seam and stitch the side seam just like any other stitch. You still want to use a stretch stitch. I'm going to serge it, and then the bodice will be done and ready to attach the sleeves. So here are my side seams all stitched up. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this right side out so you can get a look at it. So here's the knot shirt, the bodice all completed, and now you would move on to whatever sleeve option you're doing, whether you're leaving it sleeveless and just hemming these or putting in a long sleeve or 3/4 length sleeve. The sleeves go on like any other sleeve would to a knit shirt, so there's really nothing different there. So we're not going to do those, but this is what your completed knot shirt bodice should look like. If you have any questions, just let us know in the 5 out of 4 Facebook group and we can help you out. Thanks.
Well, there you have it. That is how you achieve the non-breastfeeding version, knot version of this top or dress. If you have any questions, feel free to comment or find us on Facebook, and we will get you all worked out. So I'll see you tomorrow for day 4. Bye.